in that state, stay allied to the government of Afghanistan, that the government of Afghanistan has to deliver for them. It has to deliver decent governance, and it has to deliver the prospect of economic development. That's absolutely clear, and that's what we heard at the Shura yesterday. President Karzai held, and we'd hear exactly the same elsewhere. So there's no question that that is absolutely critical to bringing this insurgency to an end and dealing with the grievances that, let's say, 3/4 of the insurgency who are local need resolved if they are to go back into the political and economic mainstream. That's why I don't see reconciliation. You sort of described it as suing for reconciliation. That isn't the way that we see it. The absolute heart of the strategy General McChrystal set out last year is to protect the population and to give the population the chance to fulfil all of the things that any of us want. And that's protecting them against various threats, including the insurgency, but not exclusively the insurgency. And therefore, if they decide that they don't want the hardline insurgents running their area anymore, they want to come back into the political and economic mainstream, and of course that depends on decent governance from the government, depends on ensuring that local warlords and others aren't able to abuse power and capture government institutions, which is what has happened in the past, then we'll just see reconciliation happening in a fairly organic way. In terms of the importance of Kandahar, you're right to point to the both psychological, emotional and practical importance of Kandahar. It was the heart of the Taliban regime when they were here, and therefore, if we are able to succeed in Kandahar, align all of these elements, governance, development, security, the political, the civilian, the military if you prefer, and really ensure that Kandahar is stable and sustainable, then in my view the historians will probably look back on that as one of the decisive moments of this campaign, but of course we won't know that until we have seen this through to a successful conclusion.
When you step back a little bit, you must have had some benchmarks for yourself after the President authorized the new strategy, the additional troops. How are you doing toward those benchmarks? And are there parts of the country that you're concerned about with all the focus on Helmand and Kandahar? For example, in the north there's a railroad project, I believe, and I wonder how concerned you are about the potential for Taliban attacks on something like that. And Ambassador Sedwill, what about training? What is the quality and the depth of training for some of the civilians that you're trying to develop in government institutions?
Great. On where I wanted to be when the President made his decision on 1st of December, we're in pretty good shape. But again, I'm cautious because there are a lot of things that can either prove me wrong or could derail things. In the operational main effort, that is the effort in the south now, that is what we're doing in the Helmand River Valley and then moving toward Kandahar. That's to expand security as we discussed, but it's also to send a clear signal. In the Taliban's strongest area, we intend to achieve security for the people with the kinds of governance that makes it durable. That will take time to prove, but I think we're moving in that direction. Other parts of the country, like the east, I'm pretty comfortable. There's an awful lot of Haqqani effort in the Kaust Bowl, but I think we're doing well against it, and we'll do even better in the coming months as more forces arrive. And then in places like the north and the west, it's clearly an economy of force, but we know that we've got to make some progress there, and we are applying forces to do that and making some command and control adjustments which have already helped us somewhat. Our strategic main effort is the growth of the Afghan National Security Forces. That's really the thing that gives them the foundation to stand on over time in security. That's challenging. The Afghan National Army has performed well down in the Marja op, as they do typically in combat. The Afghan National Police, the Afghan National Civil Order Police have performed well down there. But as Ambassador Sedwill, the local police were very, very corrupt and illegitimate with the people. So we've got a lot of work to do with the police, and still a lot of work to help the Army to grow. We're on the right path there, but it clearly is going to take an awful lot of effort and a lot of time. We're still going out and asking for more help with trainers from our coalition partners and whatnot. So big task in front of us, but we're about where I thought we'd be and hoped we'd be at this point.
In terms of your question about the civil capacity, the civil training, there are several thousand graduates come out of the Afghan Civil Service College. I can't remember the exact name of the institution each year now, and they've just started coming. They've just started coming through, and in Marja, several dozen across various ministries of those graduates are going down to deliver for the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, etc. On the ground. I think the other thing you can look at here is that there are some very successful development programs. The National Solidarity Program, which is essentially a grassroots development program. A village shura decides what it is they want, they get a block grant, and they very largely implement and drive these programs themselves with some technical assistance from one of the NGOs or from the Afghan government. It varies from around the country. That program is state-of-the-art and is actually well ahead of development programs in many other countries because it's embedded in the community. The areas, so I think in economic and social development, we're in good shape. The areas where we are most vulnerable are, as General McChrystal mentioned, the police, where probably around three-quarters of the normal police, the Afghan police, not the civil order police, aren't yet properly trained, but there are programs to take them out of districts, train them, and then put them back in again. And you see a real difference in those almost straight away, certainly in the population's attitude toward them. And then in the justice sector as well, and for the reasons I explained to an earlier question, that is going to take some time. It takes a while to grow decent lawyers and judges, and therefore we're going to have to mesh together traditional mechanisms with the state mechanisms. But we do need to remember this is a country at an early stage of development in many ways, and therefore the expectations the Afghan people have of their government are not the expectations we're used to. They're fairly basic, and what they want is a decent police force, a clean and competent local magistrate. They want a clinic, they want a school, but they know that those things are going to be fairly basic for many years to come. And I believe the capacity exists to deliver those if we do so, to pick up a point General McChrystal made earlier, with the grain of the local culture.
Elizabeth Gilmore from the New York Times. General McChrystal, you said there wouldn't be a D-Day for Kandahar, but could you give any sense of time when this might be at its height or completed, and also a sense of ultimately how many American troops will be involved in the operation?
Yeah, Elizabeth, I don't want to get real specific on that. It'll be several months before we actually are at our full strength in the area around Kandahar. Part of that is based upon the force flow that is moving very well. But I think we'll have, at that point, enough Afghan forces, because we're still, of course, fielding those as well. Early summer.
Early summer is when you will have the
Our forces will be significantly increased around there by early summer. Yes, ma'am.
But just to pick up a point General McChrystal made earlier and just set it in this context, as General McChrystal said, we want to be our forces to be pulled into an area by the local population. So there is a conditions-based element to this as well, and we need to make sure that the local politics have moved forward. That doesn't mean we can give it forever, but it does mean that we want to calibrate the timing of the military operation against the requirements of the local people.
And Ambassador, if I could just ask you, is there going to be any effort to vet any more local candidates for district office in the future after what happened in March? I noticed, you reported as saying that this wouldn't be a government of choir boys, so I was curious what your plans were moving forward.
Well, again, this is really an issue for the Afghans themselves, and I think we have to remember that there are people in very senior positions within government and associated with government who have a list of indictments against their name that put into the shade anything that a guy like Haji Zahir has been accused of. And of course, that story is not yet entirely clear, and so we aren't going to be vetting individuals ourselves. No, it's not for us to do that. It's for the government of Afghanistan to decide, and they need to look at individuals, look at their capabilities, look at their track record, and if they have a bad past, either personally or because they've been involved in the civil war period or the Taliban period or whatever, then it's for the government and indeed the local shuras to determine whether or not that's an acceptable background for someone to have. But in a post-conflict situation like this, the people who are going to exercise authority will have been involved in the conflict in many cases. You can't just do this with technocrats from outside, and therefore there will be